back to Clarity Combos for Wedding Pros podcast. I'm your host, Aislinn, and today's episode is a snippet from the What to Focus On Challenge, where I guide you through 3 days of discovering what you need to work on in your wedding business to lock in and blow up your income. If you like this episode and want to know more about my offers, go to the show notes to explore more ways that we can work together. What to focus on when you want to take on less weddings. So a little bit of context around this. I'll give you a little bit of background of my story, but then also like what happens in my world fairly often. So I was a wedding photographer for 14 years. My last few years as a wedding photographer, I was charging between 10 and 17K for weddings. And I lived in the South. So that was pretty high prices for where I lived. But I also was doing a lot of destination work like across the country. So when I was doing this, I was really like not taking on a ton of weddings. Like I was maybe doing 10 at most, and a lot of them would be local, but then some of them would be destination. And I hit this point in the last couple of years before I retired from wedding photography where I was just like, I want less. I want less than what I'm doing, but I wasn't coming at it from the perspective of I need to build out a new business or I need to do something different than what I'm doing. I was really coming at it from this perspective of I want to give my all to the amount of weddings that I have, and I don't want that to be a ton of people. I want it to be maybe 5, maybe 7 people, but I don't want it to be like 10, 15, 20. And I was seeing a lot of other people who were doing luxury weddings and they were doing like higher end weddings, and they were doing like 15 to 20. And a lot of times with those weddings, like it's an entire weekend's worth of work. And for me, I just didn't want to give up that much time. So what I did when I was thinking about taking on less weddings is I focused on these specific things. And this is exactly what I tell my clients too when they come to me and they say, hey, I think I want to raise my prices and take on less weddings. So the very first thing I have them do, and I had myself do this as well back in the day, was I asked myself the question of why. What exactly is it that's making me feel like I want to take on less weddings? So this is the first thing I want you to focus on. If you are in the situation of I want to take on less weddings, I want you to ask yourself the question, why? What do I believe that having less weddings on my calendar is going to do for me? So like repeat that. What do I think having less weddings on my calendar is going to do for me? What emotion do I think that's going to give me? If I had less weddings on my calendar, what exactly do I think that's going to do for me? And what emotion do I think it's going to give me? Do I think it's going to make me happy? Do I think it's going to make me more grounded? Do I think that it's going to make me feel, I don't know, like just like ask yourself the question of like, what do you think it's going to do if you take on less weddings? Because the truth of the matter is if you have less weddings on your calendar, it means that you have more space. And when you have more space, a lot of times what comes up is healing work, or a lot of times what comes up is you have more space to think about things. And so if you're used to having a lot more space on your calendar, you're going to try to fill it, or you're going to have to start to like do like deeper inner work because you're actually going to have the space to process it. So the first thing you have to focus on if you want to take on less wedding is asking yourself the question of why. Get really, really clear with yourself on that. The next thing you have to focus on is building safety in your finances. So I see this a lot. I don't understand exactly where this comes from, but I see a lot of people who get to an established place in their careers with wedding photography, and they're like, okay, I think it's time to go the education route. And it's like, okay, let's not burn down the entire business that you built over the past 10 years in order to build a new business. So when you are thinking about taking on less weddings, one of the things that you need to think about is, am I building out the financial safety that I need in order for me to take on less weddings? Because it's going to be so hard for you to say no to a lead coming in that's like a perfectly fine lead if you don't have that financial safety, because you're going to look at that like lead and be like, oh yeah, that amount of money in my bank account would feel really good right now, so I'm going to say yes to it. Versus if you're coming at it from a place of like, yeah, I don't need the money and I don't need that, like, because I have the financial safety that I need, I'm good. I can say no to that. You're going to feel a lot more convicted around like sticking with that you are taking on less weddings. So building financial safety, some of the things I kind of want you to think about with this. Everyone's tolerance point is different. Everyone's tolerance point of what their bank account looks like is different. You have to determine for yourself, what does my bank account need to look like for my nervous system to not go into meltdown mode? So if you ask yourself that question right now, if I had a certain number in my bank account, would I feel good? If I had a certain number in my bank account, would it send me into meltdown mode? Would I say yes to everything just to get that number back up to my like safety point? You need to figure out what that is for you. Everyone is different. Every single person is different. And if you have a partner or you're in a marriage, there's also like your partner to consider as well. So you kind of have to get like really on board with building that financial safety, but knowing what your number is. So a friend of mine taught me this many, many years ago, and it helped me a lot. We should have our zero in our bank account not actually be zero. So like if my bank account is actually at zero, that is below my comfort level. If my bank account has, and I'm just going to throw out a number, this isn't like a real number. If my bank account has $5,000 on it, that to me is my zero. So I need it to be everything above $5,000 in order for me to feel comfortable. So figure out what your zero is and like what your new zero is for your tolerance level when you're thinking about building safety into your finances. And like, I want to go back to like what we're talking about here. What to focus on when you want to take on less weddings. If you are also listening to this and you're like, I actually don't think I want to take on less weddings, that is perfectly okay. This is just the first thing I wanted to talk to you about with what to focus on and like what to do if you're in this situation. All right, the next thing that you're going to have to do and have to focus on is strengthening your referral network. You will need to have an incredibly strong network of either referrals or leads if you still want to book, but you will be saying no to a lot more of those leads coming in. So, do you currently have enough inquiries coming in right now for you to take on less weddings that are actually clients that you want to work with? So that's the really important part here. Do you have enough inquiries coming in where you actually want to like book those people that are coming in? Maybe you don't book all 10 inquiries that come in. Maybe you only book like 3 of them, but we want to make sure that you have 3 people coming through your door that you actually want to work with. So for example, if you have 10 inquiries, is there at least 3 that you would want to book? Like, so this is, over the course of a month, over the course of like a quarter, whatever, or over the course of a week even. If you had 10 inquiries, are there at least 3 people that you would want to book from that little pool of inquiries? If you don't have enough inquiries coming through your door, you have a marketing problem, and that needs to get solved first before you take on less weddings. You can absolutely decide I'm going to take on less weddings, but you're going to need to focus on marketing and making sure that you are attracting enough leads through your door. Okay, the final thing that I want to talk about here is learning to be okay with space in your day and in your calendar and in your process. This is one of the most interesting things that I help my clients with when they're wanting to take on less weddings and they're wanting to raise their prices, usually in conjunction with taking on less weddings. They are uncomfortable with the amount of space that means that they're going to have. So what happens is when you have more space, if you're used to having that space filled up with weddings or marketing or networking or whatever, like you're going to naturally want to like fill up that space. Your status quo, your threshold is going to be at full. So you're naturally going to want to add more to your plate. And here's the practice that I want for you guys. Don't add more to your plate. When things are working well for you and like you have the amount of inquiries coming in and you have, that you only want to take on 5 weddings in a year, don't fill up your plate with a whole bunch of things that don't like actually fill your cup. So like, don't fill it up with networking things or, I need to go to Engage or I need to go to like this workshop or whatever. Do you actually need to do that? Or is it just like a dopamine hit for you? So these are a couple of things to focus on if you're wanting to take on less weddings. So I kind of want to tie this up in a nice little pretty bow for you. If you want to take on less weddings, the things that you would need to work on are mindset and marketing. For mindset, I'm going to have you ask yourself the questions that were at the top of this riff, and I'm going to go back up there and ask you these questions really quick. Why? What do you believe that having less weddings on your calendar will do for you, and what emotion do you think that it'll give you? So that's the first thing. You need to be working on or focusing on your mindset. And this is an action step for you. I want you to map out your ideal day or your ideal week without these extra weddings. So if you're used to taking on 15 weddings a year and you're like, actually, I only want to take on 5, what does your ideal day look like? What does your ideal week look like? How much space is on your calendar? The second thing you're going to need to focus on if you want to take on less weddings is marketing. You need to ask yourself if you have enough inquiries coming in and focus your attention on where in your business are you getting the most leads. So right now, I want you to ask yourself this question. Where in my business have the past most amazing weddings come from? Were they referrals? Was it Google? Was it certain blogs that I wrote? Was it referrals from a certain person, this particular venue? I want you to put your focus and your energy there. How can you build up better relationships there? How can you put more effort there? And like, I want you to also take like things off your calendar and off your like yes list of things that are not actually like sending you referrals and not actually ending up being like a good referral base, essentially. So that's what to focus on if you are wanting to take on less weddings. Thanks for listening to today's Clarity Combos for Wedding Pros episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out the show notes below for the educational shop and mentorship options. I'll see you in the next episode.